Okay, everyone, I believe we are ready to begin. My name is Rob Altsmont, VP of Marketing for Hirekos Golf, and I'll be your moderator for today's Hirekos webinar titled The Basics of Ferrule Finishing. The webinar will be led by Hirekos Technical Director Jeff Summitt. Some of you have heard this intro before. It'll only be about a minute. Jeff has worked in all facets of club making and repair since 1984 and has devoted the past 20 years to researching, testing, and analyzing thousands of different golf shafts. He has compiled his findings and research into the Dynamic Shaft Fitting Index, which is featured in the best-selling book, The Modern Guide to Club Making. Additionally, he has authored the annual Dynamic Shaft Fitting Addendum, which instructs club fitters in the proper fitting and selection of shafts. Both books are available for sale online at hirekogolf.com. Your audio settings are muted, which means we cannot hear you, so don't worry about coughing or phones ringing in the background. If you have any questions or difficulties listening to or viewing the webinar, feel free to type them in the question or chat box located in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Because we have limited time, we are saving the question and answer period for the end when Jeff has completed his talk. But again, please type your question in the question box as they arise, and we'll get to them as they see fit at the end. If for any reason you must leave the webinar, don't worry, it is being recorded and will be posted on our blog at blog.hirekogolf.com and youtube.com/hirekogolf. And I'll get those up probably by 3 o'clock Eastern Time. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Hirekos Golf's Technical Director, Jeff Summitt. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Rob, and thank all of you for attending today's webinar. We'll wait for the slide here to change. Okay. In our last webinar, we discussed the various ways that length can be measured on all clubs, including putters. Hopefully some of the tips I spoke about and the jigs and fixtures I illustrated may have helped increase the proficiency in your shop. Now we're on to possibly our next or even last step in the assembly process, which is ferrule finishing. You didn't just hear or mishear what I said, because you have an option as a club maker. That is assuming you're going to decide to finish the ferrule at all, which sadly many don't. Why finish a ferrule in the first place? I have one word for that: professionalism. You see, the average golfers won't understand if the shaft is cut incorrectly, causing the club to be off by half a flex, or if the length is off by a quarter inch, or if the swing weight's off by 2 points. No, but an average consumer can feel that there's a ledge or a lip where the ferrule and the top of the hosel meet. It's the little things like that, or your fingerprints of epoxy on the shaft or the head, that the end consumer will notice. Okay, before we get to the point of finishing the ferrule, I want to first go over what the purpose of the ferrule is. Ferrules are simply those plastic trim pieces located above the hosel on the club head. The main purpose is to provide a nice smooth transition from the hosel to the shaft. The majority of ferrules you see are black in color, and they may have one or more trim rings in their upper or even lower end to provide a nice cosmetic aspect to the golf club. For many years, the outside diameter of the ferrule was typically larger than the average hosel. This required that the club maker turn down or dress or sand the ferrule flush with the outside diameter of the hosel to provide that nice smooth transition. On the opposite extreme, where the ferrule is undersized or the base is smaller than the outside diameter of the hosel, this shows poor workmanship. This is why ferrules were produced with larger outside diameters to accommodate as many clubs as possible. Unfortunately, many club makers find turning ferrules takes up valuable time, or they simply don't have the right equipment to do so. To eliminate the need for sanding the ferrules, they find it useful to start out with a ferrule that fits almost precisely and leave it at that. But first you have to realize that hosels have tolerances too. The outside diameters are hand polished during the finishing process, so they will not always match outside diameter for outside diameter each and every time. This is the reason why turning down the ferrule is the most acceptable method. At Hirekos, we actually made your work easier by providing different size wood ferrules. Plus, we've standardized our hosel diameters with respect to product category. That is, in all our irons, hold on one second. Okay, on all our irons, hybrids and wedges have a hosel designed to be 13.6 millimeters or 0.535 inches. On our standard stainless steel fairway woods, the diameters are 12.2 millimeters or 48 thousandths of an inch. Lastly, for our titanium drivers, the outside diameters are 12.7 millimeters or half an inch in diameter. This is why Hirekos offers two different size wood ferrules. Otherwise, it would require you to remove 20 thousandths from the base of the ferrule just to match the stainless steel ferrules, or fairway woods. Even though our ferrules will match closely with our heads, we encourage our customers to still finish the ferrule because the hosel may still have a slight tolerance and you'll never get a perfect fit. Plus, some ferrule installation tools can flare out the base of the ferrule when driving them on, so it's a good practice anyway to turn down the ferrule. When selecting which ferrules to use, the requirement is to choose the type that it's designed not only to fit the diameter of the shafts being used or the outside diameter of the head, but also to suit the design of the club head. It's customary to select the length of the ferrule based on the length of the hosel. For example, a short ferrule looks more appropriate on a club head with a shorter hosel, while a longer ferrule is better suited to a more traditional long hosel club head. And I'll tell you this from personal experience, a shorter ferrule is easier to finish than a longer one. Plus, a plain black ferrule is easier to finish than one with any trim rings. So when is the best time to finish the ferrule? The answer might depend upon your confidence or skill level as a club maker. Some club makers elect to wait until the very end after they've gripped the golf club. Others may perform this operation after the epoxy is set and before the club has been cut to length. The reasons for waiting until the end or before will vary. I was taught that any cleaning is done at the last minute before handing the club to the customer or putting a club in a box to be shipped. This is how it's often done on the assembly line. On the other hand, I think most of you will find finishing or partially finishing is best done after the epoxy is set. The main reason is if during the ferrule finishing procedure you make a mistake, you'll have to take the club apart to put on a new ferrule. Therefore, it's best that it's done before you spend additional time gripping the golf club. Remember that ferrules are usually force-fit onto the shaft, and it may require driving the butt end of the shaft on the ground. If you do that with the grip on, then you can end up damaging the grip. The picture on the slide will show you an example of what can happen. The last thing you want to do is cut off a perfectly good grip, especially with some of the grips costing $8 each. Yes, you can use a grip shooter, but using one to remove the grip requires additional time and resources. And remember, your time is money. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Since you're attending today's webinar, I'm assuming that you're going to take time to finish the ferrules. I'm going to commend all of you today for wanting to learn to do this right. So I'm going to explain several different ways to turn down a ferrule because not everybody's going to have the same access to the same tools or the willingness to go on the dark side and use a belt sander. The quickest way to turn a ferrule, if you've done your due diligence,